Is it legal to booby trap your house like something out of the movie Saw? Well, an Oregon man in his 70s decided to test that theory and found out that the answer was no. I'm Kevin Nooper. I'm an attorney at Nooper and Covey, and I want to walk you through this completely insane criminal prosecution where an elderly man in Oregon lost his house in a lawsuit and decided that he was just going out with a bang, literally, and started putting traps all over his house. He turned like a wheelchair into a automatically triggered shotgun. He put bear traps all over the place. He turned his hot tub into an Indiana Jones style Temple of Doom boulder that would roll and attack anyone who triggered the trap, and basically turned the entire house, the entire land into this death trap. And an FBI agent was shot in the knee by one of his automatic shotgun shell devices. And he just recently got convicted by a jury of also shooting at an FBI agent while they were coming to try to basically, get rid of or disarm this whole scenario. So I'm going to walk you through this criminal prosecution, what happened here, what kind of insane traps he set up all over his house of doom, and why you should never ever do this, which should be sort of common sense, but some people just don't have it. So this is the guy who did all this, or is alleged to have done this, Gregory Lee Rodvelt. You can see he's sort of, he's the kind of guy who does this, I guess. So he's, what traps did he put on his property? He had spikes sort of out there that people could, kind of spike traps like you fall on them. I don't know if you watch old Vietnam movies, Vietnam War movies, you'd see some of those. He had bear traps, like those kind of clanking metal things that snap on your leg. So some traditional traps out everywhere. He had a wheelchair that was like in the house that's the one that shot the FBI agent. And that's kind of people who build traps sometimes use shotgun shells to do that, where he had shotgun shells in the wheelchair where if you kind of like there were triggers near it where it would fire the shotgun shell for anyone who triggered the trap. And then the big one he had was a hot tub trap that he actually said he was inspired by the movie Indiana Jones. Raiders of the Lost Ark has a scene in it that many of you have seen, and I'll show you just a little bit of that scene. This is sort of younger people might not. I don't know if this movie still survives among the Zoomer generation, but it's an iconic scene where Indiana Jones picks up this thing off the an artifact, and then a boulder trap starts coming and rolling at him. So what this guy decided to do was to use a hot tub to recreate that. And so the hot tub kind, some of them are square, but like you can get hot tubs that look like this. So this is an example of like what the hot tub was, maybe a little nicer than his. But you can see it's kind of round, right? So it could roll, and he had it set up on a hill, but behind a gate. And so if someone opened the gate, it was designed so that this hot tub would sort of like launch at them like a boulder and try to like run them down and attack them. And he had all kinds of these like bear traps everywhere, all around the house. I'm not sure they've even disarmed them all or whatever, but they went into this property, tried to find him, and then I'm going to show you what the FBI agents sort of said about what happened whenever like their allegations about this in the criminal complaint. Okay, so here's the criminal complaint. A complaint is the first document in any either lawsuit or criminal cases. Sometimes in criminal cases, in this one they had as well an indictment, but those are just sort of initial documents that tell you what is the person being accused of doing. And this one's interesting because it has an affidavit from an FBI agent. Affidavit is a sworn statement where he swears to various facts. And you can see here they were initially charging him with assault of a federal officer. There's some more charges later. And then this FBI special agent, Jeffrey Gray, signs this, and basically in front of a magistrate judge, it looks like, which is a federal judge. And here's what he says. He says he's kind of the special agent. Here's all his experience. He went to Quantico, which is the FBI training center. And then he, it says there's probable cause that Gregory Lee Rodvelt committed this assault on a police officer. And how did he do that? So here's what happened. They've got this property in Oregon. It used to be owned by Gregory Lee Rodvelt until August 22nd, 2018, when the circuit judge, which is like a kind of a local judge in Oregon, signed an order that appointed a receiver over the property. And a receiver is someone who, like, whenever a person, it could be if the person's in bankruptcy, bankruptcy, they might be a trustee is what it's called, but if they basically are in financial issues or the property sort of needs to be taken away from someone, a receiver is someone who kind of takes control of it and can sell it or run a business or whatever to try to protect the property for whoever the new owners, like the creditors, the people who are trying to get money out of this guy were. And it doesn't really say who they are, but it doesn't really matter either. So they say that bomb technicians and the bomb squad, I guess, arrive at this property. There's probably some kind of report from the receiver about this or whatever. Someone realized that there were bombs and traps and stuff here. So This guy, the receiver Joseph Charter, he's this attorney. He I guess enlists the bomb squad, and he says, "I need you to make it safe." He says that this Rodvelt guy had been arrested a little bit before for unlawful possession of explosives in Arizona, but his property's in Oregon. So he gets released from Arizona, and then basically to go deal with this civil lawsuit in this county in Oregon, Josephine County, and the attorney Charter, the receiver, learns from the neighbors that he's just come up to this property, and he sees a sign when he goes up there to kind of be the receiver. He sees a sign warning the property was protected by these improvised like devices, so traps and bombs and whatnot. And so the bomb technicians from the FBI arrive at the property after the receiver calls them. It says they noted the FBI sees a minivan that's parked to sort of block vehicles from driving past the front gate. The technicians discovered that the minivan was rigged with 2 booby traps. And those booby traps were steel traps with steel teeth commonly used to trap wild animals. But there were no explosives incorporated in these traps. And so the bomb squad, it says they render the trap safe, so they trigger them somehow or whatever. And then they start approaching the residence. It says, as they neared the gate closest to the residence, they noted a circular hot tub spa near the gate. The spa was sitting on edge. Upon closer examination, the technicians discovered that the spa was rigged in such a manner that when the gate was opened, it would activate a mechanical trigger that would cause the spa to roll towards the person at the gate, much like a scene from the movie Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark, in which actor Harrison Ford is forced to outrun a giant stone boulder that he inadvertently triggered by a booby trap switch. And this says a couple of the bomb squad go over to the garage, and then on the outside, and then the other members of the bomb squad go over to the outside of the residence. And the ones who go to the garage, it says they found that the overhead garage doors next to them was a wood rat trap, and the trap had been altered to have to accommodate a shotgun shell. It says that the trap was not set, but it was situated in such a manner that had it been set when the garage door was lifted, the trap would be tripped. The bar of the trap would fall on the shotgun shell primer, with the apparent intended results being the discharge of the shot shell. So basically, he'd set it up so the garage door, if you it wasn't actually set, but he was preparing this trap where if you open the garage door, it's just going to shoot a shotgun shell at you. And then the bomb squad people who go to the sort of perimeter of the house discovered that all the windows have been barred from inside, and the rear door was secured by a heavy security door that opened inward. So they clear the deck. All of the bomb squad goes to the front door, and they seen all these booby traps, so they decide, okay, we're going to just blow this door open with a explosive charge. So they do that. Once they go in, they see a length of monofilament, which is like those thin lines you kind of see in the movie sometimes that lead off to some trap, little string looking stuff. And they see this. They see it goes behind the door, and the door jam. They can't see where it ends, so they do kind of a limited entry inside. One of the FBI agents is in just inside the door. They say that there's a wheelchair immediately in front of the bomb technicians. The wheelchair was moved forward, but they right now with the FBI agent or the bomb squad, they have no idea what happens. And then there's just this explosion. So it disorients one of the bomb technicians. One of the other ones yells, "I'm hit," but he remains standing. But there's blood coming out of his leg. All of them just book it out of there. And so they go to the hospital to get first aid. They find an object like a pellet in the leg of the guy who was hit in the leg. And then they basically are okay, we got to figure out what's going on with this guy. They start doing searches of his history, of his residence. They contact this guy as he's going out of a grocery store in Albertsons in Arizona. So this property's in Oregon. I guess he's back in Arizona in late 2018. They tell him, hey, we're going to want to ask you some questions about your Oregon property. And he states he set up fishing line and a tripwire across the gate to the hot tub so it would hit whoever comes down through the gate. And he literally describes it as the stone rolling down in the Indiana Jones movie. He says he has all the other tripwires. He has a spike strip made of nails, wood to flatten tires if someone drives up there, and then he won't give them details about the tripwires. So they kind of just let him go. I guess they don't have a search warrant really, or a warrant. And that's September 7th, 2018. The next day they get the warrant, they go arrest him. And he says, when they ask him, are there any threats to the property? He's I would not race right in, which probably is sound advice. And so he asks he asks law enforcement to wait 24 hours, saying that he should call someone. And but then he's I don't want to tell you who that is. Then this magistrate judge gives them a search warrant to go like search the property. They find the FBI agents find when they go back a device from a rat trap. They find a shell casing from a shotgun shell that had been expended, so they think that it was fired at the FBI agent's leg. They seize the wheelchair trap. They find that the wheelchair appears to have like damage from shotgun shell pellets. So basically, he's like, okay, this guy clearly, he said it. He said he trapped his property. These FBI agents were running into this, and they think he actually shot them like from behind the wheelchair or around the wheelchair or something using a shotgun pellet. So that's what they initially allege in the lawsuit. So is that legal? Well, every state is going to have laws governing whether you can do this. I went to law school in Texas, and they actually did not allow booby traps, which surprised me a little bit being a Texan and knowing how Texans are. But that was one of the things where, like, that's the one thing you couldn't do. You had a lot of other things you could do with weapons in the state of Texas, but no booby traps. And in Oregon, it is not surprisingly also not allowed, definitely with the shotgun shell pellets. But maybe it is surprising that it's not really very harshly punished. So you can see this. This is a section of the Oregon Criminal Code, 166.320, for setting a spring gun or a set gun. And a spring gun is kind of the name for whenever you set up a gun to fire automatically. And this says any person who places or sets any loaded spring gun, set gun, or any gun, firearm, or other device of any kind designed for containing or firing explosives in any place where it may be fired, exploded, or discharged by the contact of any person or animal with any string, wire, rod, stick, spring, or other contrivance affixed to or connected with it, or with its trigger, commits a Class B misdemeanor. And it says subsection 1 of this section does not apply to any loaded spring gun, set gun, firearm, or other device placed for the purpose of destroying gophers, moles, or other burrowing rodents, and does not prevent the use of a coyote getter by employees of county, state, or federal governments engaged in cooperative predatory animal control work. So a few things about that. So basically, in general, it is a misdemeanor, not a felony, which means there's sort of a lesser crime. It's not punished with that much with a misdemeanor compared to like a felony. There's Class Bs. There's classes of misdemeanor. States will do it like Class A, Class B, Class C. Class A are the most serious. Class B are the less serious. So this is not something that probably would even put him to jail for that long, at least under Oregon state law. And they actually didn't even charge him under it. So he was not charged under this statute. They kind of wanted to do a little more, so they charged him under a federal law, which we'll look at in a minute. But just so you kind of know in general, don't set these up. It is legal in Oregon to shoot gophers with them. So if you want to sit one in front of a gopher hole, apparently you can like set up a shotgun in front of them. And perhaps surprisingly, there's nothing in this that talks about creating an Indiana Jones style hot tub boulder, which is probably because the Oregon legislature did not anticipate anyone ever deciding to do that. But they make these laws because they don't want people like setting up things that someone could run it. If you set that up, who knows if this guy just dies and someone tries to go into his house or whatever. Like, it's real dangerous to have these kind of things just sitting around. And so it is generally, I am not aware of any states where it's legal to do this. How did the government try to prosecute him on this stuff? So they had 3 counts originally, and it looks so I can't be 100% sure from the court records. A lot of them are not public yet. They sort of are like, it looks like they're on a timer for the government to try to like redact stuff out that might be confidential or that they don't want the public knowing. And at some point they're going to come out. But right now it's kind of hard to tell exactly what the court did. But it looks like the court did not allow this charge to go forward on sort of like the trap aspect of this. And the reason was because they didn't do state law, which would have been pretty clean, but maybe not very helpful to them because it might not have been much of a penalty. But they tried to use a federal law about owning and using a mine. So they were trying to say that these devices were mines under federal law. This is the brief of the prosecutors when they tried to argue this. And I'll just look at it real quickly. You can see there's a statute when you see this sort of language. It's 18 United States Code, Section 921. And so that covers like a destructive device is what they called it. And you'll note this was count 3. That's kind of important to flag just because I'm going to show you the jury verdict later. It does not have a count 3, and that means or suggests to me heavily that this was dismissed by the judge. So this says that they're basically like making legal arguments of can like a shotgun thing that someone sets up under this law for a destructive device, is it like a destructive device such that federal law would like let you be prosecuted? And they're kind of quoting law that under federal law, those are not strictly military or gangster type weapons. They can be destructive devices even if they have constructive use. Do-it-yourself variety weapons can fall under this law, this federal law that's designed to stop people from using like mine type things. They like some examples are like pipe bombs that people have made. They aren't like they're saying pipe bombs aren't for entertainment. If you can like blow up stuff or cause a concussion or whatever, it doesn't have to be sophisticated or whatever. And so they're trying to say that these shotgun devices were like prosecutable. They all these things are other like legal cases where they're kind of citing similar examples. Like someone had a detonator with a radio signal with a battery box, and they use shotgun shells to be the explosive charge. And they're saying, and so the federal government is trying to say, like, look, this is really like one of these mines. It's it's a military term, but they say that this should. They're quoting like the senators who passed this that are like trying to say like, yeah, it can't just be a common mine. It's like mines are more than just a landmine. Like they're more than just claymores. They include these like crazy traps that this guy put up, and so they want the jury to be instructed on like prosecuting him with this mine, and they say that or what they say is mine, and they say something that's tripwired to sort of explode or cause an explosion, which I guess would be the shotgun shells, would fall within this. But then the defense in the case filed a sort of an opposition saying that this whole not really an opposition, but a motion to acquit him just sort of as a matter of law on this charge. And that's something that can happen. A judge can sort of order an acquittal, or if there is no legal way or factual way for a person to reasonably be convicted of something. And I'll just show you the defense brief here. He actually is using public defenders, which is surprising that they gave him a real defense here. So maybe because it's an interesting case. Certainly, a public defender probably does not get many cases like this one, and a panel attorney is what it's called. And if you're wondering what that is, so there are some attorneys who are private attorneys, so they don't really work for the government. But in criminal cases in some states or some courts, there's what's called a panel, which is just attorneys who have signed up and volunteered to do criminal cases at like a reduced rate. From their private rate, and then they work as like kind of public defenders, but not really. So he has both a public defender and one of these panel attorneys, and they moved for a judgment of acquittal on this count 3. Count 3 is this federal mine destructive device statute, and they say they're arguing basically like this is not as far. It's like a rat trap. It's a shotgun shell. That's not like an explosive device, kind of like a mine that the government's trying to talk about. And basically they're saying, if you do that, mine is like a dictionary definition. This is a rat trap with a single shotgun shell that has birdshot on it. It's not something that's like, a battleship mine or something you'd need a mine removal device. It's just like basically just an automated shotgun essentially that would go off if you did that. And they're kind of arguing essentially that to the court that if you put this shotgun shell rat trap in there as a destructive device, then anybody who sets up like a gopher trap that is as a booby trap is going to be punished under this extremely harsh federal statute. They say it doesn't, that's basically way too much. And there's a whole bunch of argument here about like the diameter, that the statute has like restrictions on how much the bore of a barrel of the gun has to be to qualify like as destructive or not destructive. They have exceptions, and that's all probably complicated. That is a little maybe beyond what most people care about. Hopefully, you're not setting up. Hopefully, none of you are trying to set up booby traps and hope that you can get out of it with using like certain bores of something of the gun, barrels or whatever to avoid doing it. It's just not a good idea in general. But it does look like the defense won with these arguments. Basically, what they convinced the court on. If you look at the court docket, it does say that the court sort of. He decided some of these motions, and then the judge held off on this particular motion, which means that he was kind of considering it in a little more detail. And then let me show you the jury verdict so you can see that. And recall that this, if we go back up here, it is a motion on count 3. So of this case. And this is the verdict form. So if you see on TV, like they'll go back, the jury will go back in the room. If you've never been on a jury, this is usually what happens, whether civil or criminal. They will give like a very short little questionnaire. It's designed for just regular people who aren't lawyers to understand it. And all this stuff is typed out in advance so that you can just sort of, the jury can just take a pencil or a pen and just check stuff and then sign it. It's made to be like as easy as possible because jurors are just regular people. They don't know, like they can't write out a jury, like a verdict. So if you look at this one, this is the verdict form. You can see here there's a count 1, there's a count 2, but there's no count 3. Just stops at 2. So that pretty heavily suggests to me that the judge decided that this could not go forward on the federal destructive device law. But they still found him guilty on 2 other counts, because the problem is that it looks like this guy shot at the officer. They found him guilty of assaulting a federal officer, and they found that he used a deadly or dangerous weapon. So they checked yes, they checked guilty. They could have checked not guilty, and that would have been the other way, or they could have checked no. Even if you find him guilty, you've got to decide. They call it a special verdict question. So that's something where a certain kind of fact might enhance the punishment for an offense. So you could assault a federal officer but not use a deadly weapon. If it had been no, the punishment probably would have been a lot less. But he's probably, at 71, he is probably not getting out. It's probably effectively a life sentence no matter what he gets. Then they also ask, like, did it inflict bodily injury? Yes. So again, that's something that would enhance the punishment. And then they asked, did he use a firearm during and in relation to a crime of violence? They found him guilty. And then they had another special verdict question for that one. Did he discharge a firearm? Yes. And that's from, they sort of are alleging that he shot at this officer from behind the wheelchair trap while they were sort of entering the house to try to, like, figure out what the heck was going on. So that's like the end of this for now. This is very recent. You can see this is June 2023, which is about a week from when I'm making this video, which means we don't actually have a sentence yet. We don't know what this guy will get. I do anticipate it will be a very long time, or long enough that at 71 years old, he will not, he's going to be in there for a while, especially because he seems to have a history in Arizona of, like, separately possessing explosives and kind of just being the kind of person that they're going to go after real hard if he shoots an FBI agent in the knee. So both from a legal and just practical perspective, don't ever turn your house into the Saw movies. It is not a good idea. You cannot set up stuff like that. You may be able to, like, do minor things to, kill gophers or whatever if you have those. But you cannot try to set up traps for people coming on your property. Even if you're like, if people think, oh, it's my property, I can do what I want. The law doesn't really treat it that way. And especially if you get in a shootout with federal agents, you're not going to like the result. We'll see what happens to him. I do think it's going to be a long time, and it is definitely, like, a very insane case, and definitely, if you ever see an indication of someone having traps on their property that you're going out to repossess, then if that's the job you do, I would call the bomb squad too. So if you want to hit subscribe, you can see more crazy lawsuits that I go through, or one of the other videos on the end screen will be popping up that's got something else that probably is not as crazy as this one, but there's a lot of insane things happening in the court system.